Questions continue to be raised over whether the introduction of the sugar tax has so far yielded the desired results. Now, that move was implemented in 2018 based on various studies, including the World Health Organization, showing that an increase in the retail price of such goods could reduce the consumption of sugar-sweetened beverages significantly. Debate has also been long-standing on the move, possibly having a negative impact on the sugar industry, resulting in the likes of job losses. HEALA Program Manager Nzama Mbalati joins me in studio. Thank you so much for your time. I think maybe let's demystify the job loss issue when it comes to the sugar tax having been implemented. Have we seen that?
Good morning and thank you for having us. I think the issue of jobs and the sugar industry and job losses, I think it's a long history of things, and I think the data that we know, that we have seen, has only come from the sugar industry. We don't know if there are independent studies that can actually verify that. But I think it's important to look at the history of the sugar industry in the past 20 years, which has been declining really, with a couple of challenges and issues. You know, the sugar dumping, you know, the high labor input, it has been having like issues with like cheap import of sugar from Eswatini and Brazil and so on. So I think it's important to look at, is it easy to like look at single issue in an industry that has been declining for 20 years before the tax was actually introduced as the main cause or as the only cause. And I don't think even the sugar industry can independently, you know, verify that.
Having said that, what have we seen in terms of gains and the gravitas that the sugar tax has on the industry? As you've rightfully explained, that there are wide-ranging issues that the sector is dealing with. One of concern being the competition that would be coming from the side of dumping, which essentially is illegal.
Yeah. So one of the things I think we've been calling for a while regarding the sugar industry, because it has been declining, and eventually if the sugar industry doesn't diversify, it's going to face really crumbling on its knees. We have been saying there is a booming market, and I mean, we're coming from the BRICS summit, right? Countries, our counterparts, same as developing countries as us, India and Brazil. Brazil is at 73% of conversion of sugar into ethanol and biofuel. India has moved to 20% this year. And I think we've been calling, and I think also the sugar industry, I think it has to look at, need to look at also the accountability in terms of the sugar master plan, right? So, I mean, from the community side, we have been saying, okay, the sugar industry has been given reprieve for 3 years now running. What has been achieved? What is the accountability in terms of the sugar master plan? What has been achieved in terms of that plan? And I think there's not been greater transparency and accountability in terms of that. So I think it's important that we can like actually start having this conversation and actually move, because now it looks like we get into a stark reality of a growing epidemic of non-communicable diseases and the issue of jobs. And I don't think we are battering the sugar industry, even as communities, as Health Living Alliance. We're saying we need to address the issue of the overconsumption of sugar in this country with the kind of the epidemic that we have. And it's not sustainable that we want to create sugar demand on consumption, on diet. How can we move forward with that conversation and not get stuck into, you know, the lobbying and the attack when this health, you know, intervention or the health taxes intervention comes into play to protect people?
You referenced the master plan, and South Africa has sometimes, you know, been criticized about lack of implementation. We have great plans, and at this particular juncture, there is, of course, the accusation that South Africa is falling behind the rest of the world on this agenda when it comes to a lower, you know, produce of sugar in our foods. What's to be said about that bottleneck?
I think the bottleneck, I mean, we have been trying to give advice for free, really. Not that it's our job. That we actually need to actually look at the master plan in a way that it doesn't become a rhetoric, right? But I think secondly, what is important is what are some of the problematic issues? Because the master plan still was talking about increasing the sugar demand to 90%. It still had nothing to talk about diversification and actually crop diversification, as well as looking at converting the uses of sugar into ethanol. It had absolutely nothing in that. So I think there are some problematic issues with the sugar master plan, but I think there is a need to stop the rhetoric and really move on and into this just transition, because the most important thing now is South Africa cannot afford, diabetes is the second leading cause of death, we all know, cannot afford to have the population that is actually stuck in the reality of overconsumption of sugar. We need to actually, we're talking about the national health insurance currently, and in order for us really to realize and achieve really making sure that we can afford even the national health insurance, the epidemic of non-communicable disease has to be addressed urgently. And I think the sugar tax, very importantly, it's one of the tools that we have actually in the nut box. It's not the only, and I think because sometimes we get into that conversation, it's important that we can have that, that screw that can help us, to tighten the balls in terms of really reducing and promoting good health.
Quite interesting because in the South African dispensation on this matter, we do get fixated on the word tax as opposed to what could be done. I'm wondering, once we maybe get to a stage of full implementation, how much more can the sugar tax get to in terms of addressing particularly the health issue side of this discussion?
That's a very important thing, and I think as much as we say it's a tax, in our current context, this actually is a levy. So you can avoid paying for it, right? If you don't buy the sugary drinks that actually they have that taxation. So it's an option. So this is actually a health promotion levy in a way. As much as we call it a tax, it's actually different to the excise tax and the sin taxes that we know. But anyone has to pay a little bit more if really they are on bad habits, or they are consuming a product to return back into promoting health in an overall. I think as a country we need to really move into putting the issue of non-communicable disease into political agenda. If you look at this, we currently have the beautiful national strategic plan, plans again. That plan we know doesn't have sufficient budget to actually be implemented. Like, how do we promote health in communities? How do we actually have health at the household and community level, and actually educate people about nutrition and actually how to eat healthy? How do we actually make sure that people do have access to healthy food? How do we address the issue around food prices? How do we make sure that homes have money to purchase food? So I think there are a lot of basics and practical ways that we need to go back into. And one of the things as HEALA we've been doing, we've been rolling out, the education and nutrition literacy in communities. Because there is a low literacy level in terms of people understanding really what is in their food, what they are eating. But regulation is one of the greater part that actually can also protect people from actual harm and ill health.
Thank you so much for your insights. That's Nzama Mbalati. They're speaking to us in our review of the sugar tax. What has it achieved at this point in South Africa?